cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
The meeting will now come to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Anderson,
Here.
Beaton,
Here.
Berge,
Here.
Christofferson,
Here.
Emmanuel,
Here.
Gregert,
Here.
Klinkhammer,
Here.
Lohr,
Here.
Weld,
Here.
Worthman, Jean.
Here.
Good afternoon, and thank you for those of you joining us remotely from your homes and those that are listening in as this is broadcast. This is our legislative session for May 26th, 2020. For everyone that is logged into WebEx for today's meeting, please note that you'll only be able to listen and watch during the legislative session. There is no public discussion, but again, encourage you all to stay and listen in. During our legislative session this afternoon, the council members will be participating either remotely or in person to deliberate and take action on the agenda items before us today. City staff and council members have spent a great deal of time preparing for this meeting, and I have sincere appreciation for their continued work and dedication to this community. I also want to thank Valley Media Works and their devoted staff for live streaming this meeting. To watch, please visit valleymediaworks.org or visit channel 994 on Spectrum Cable. The first item on our agenda is actually an update from City Manager Peters in regards to COVID-19. Good afternoon, Mr. Peters.
Good afternoon, Council President Weld and members of the City Council. And thank you for this opportunity to update you and the community on the status of where we're at in our COVID-19 response. Just real quickly, up on the screen is the best way for you to stay informed. And there is a coronavirus and Corona-19 information hub. This is not only where you'll find the most current information about our local situation and statistics, but it's also how you access the good work of the local task force that is working to our economic recovery. There's also then updates that are live by the health department and our health officer, Lisa Kagizi, on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday afternoons at 3:30. And you can also call a center, the hotline that we have in place at 715-831-7425. And of course, there's also social media, so we would not be engaged in this without that at the Facebook page at Eau Claire Health, and also a hashtag on Twitter at Stop the Spread Eau Claire. In terms of the emergency declaration, and each 2 weeks as we've had a council meeting, I've updated you on how that emergency declaration has been used and what we've done with it since the last meeting. Since the last meeting, actually, there's not been a whole lot of activity that's directly related to the emergency declaration. The one action that we did take was the border review did not have a policy that allowed it to function remotely, and so we had that so that the border review was able to have their annual meeting last week. Later on your agenda is a resolution to consider extending this emergency order, and I thought I'd talk a little bit about that right now. And of course, we can also talk about it when you get to that point in your agenda if you'd like. But just, I guess, a little bit in terms of just some remarks or comments about where we're at and why we have that on the agenda and how we'd use it. Just because the legal status changed in the state of Wisconsin, it didn't change the fact that we have a virus, a deadly virus, that has a lot of significant public health concerns. It is a novel virus. It's in our community. As you, I know, paid attention, we've had over 100 cases now as of today of residents in our community have tested positive. It is going to spread. It is going to grow in the community. We have no known treatment. We have no cure. There are limited hospital capacities, and there's limited public health capacity. And as we all know, the legal and political process has left it to local officials to manage this. So here we are. And at least from our perspective, from a staff point of view, and I believe it's been strongly supported by the council, doing nothing should not be an option. That we do need to be looking at this at the local level. That's what we've been asked to do by the state and by the political process and the legal process. And what we have done is taken a practical, risk-based approach that we believe will mitigate the personal spread and the community spread. And we also believe that the approach that we're taking will help everybody and every business long-term be able to emerge from this more successfully than if we don't take a practical, risk-based approach to how we manage this and come out of it. So the emergency order is really the best means for a city to act. And in this case, it will do several things, the extension that's on your agenda. First and foremost is it supports the local health officer and the orders that the local health officer has in place. And I think that should be the primary reason or consideration for the extension. Other things, though, that it does that are also very practical, your ability to conduct remote meetings comes under the authority of the executive orders. Currently, Hobbs, which is being used as a temporary shelter, is tied to that executive order being in place. And although there are people working diligently on finding alternate resources and options for the sheltering of people who are experiencing homelessness in Eau Claire, it is currently, that use is tied to the emergency order, and by having the emergency order in place through June 23rd will give us a little more time to work on that. It also, of course, provides some increased operational flexibility to be nimble for changes. And to the extent that we're still working through the status of city facilities and our closures, underneath that emergency declaration helps us with that. So there's the very real support for the health officer and the health orders, but there's also some just other practical things in helping us be nimble. So that's a little bit on the emergency declaration piece. In terms of the task force that I mentioned, the Economic Recovery Task Force has now been up, and it was about a month ago that we announced the formation of that, and going forward, they have hit the ground running. I believe there's 14 different sectors that are now populated with businesses from all over our community that are working very hard to not only appropriately implement the health recommendations, but also to figure out how they can reinvigorate and to reemerge from this crisis with successful business sectors. So a lot of good work happening there. There's now a website that is one of the primary ways in which the businesses are able to find information about the best practices, and that is at the COVID-19 hub that we talked about and referenced earlier. And then we just last week, as a task force, implemented a decal program where now over 100 businesses have signed up. They will commit and pledge to following the health guidance and recommendations as provided by the health department and the CDC. And in return for that, they get a sticker from the task force that they're able to put in their window of their business. And so that was unveiled on Thursday, and there's already 100 businesses that have signed up for that. And we think that that's going to be a very successful and powerful program because it not only helps the business stay keyed into what they need to do to operate more safely, it also allows the community to recognize that that's a business that takes being serious, taking the health recommendations very seriously and implementing those health recommendations. And so it's a two-way thing. I do want to point out that it is not an inspection program. There's just not the resources to actually inspect every business. It's a self-reporting, process where the business has gone through and studied the recommendations from the health department and has committed to implementing and working with those recommendations. And then they get the sticker they can put it on their business, and people who are frequenting that business know that that's a business that's committed to following the health recommendations. So a lot of good work with the task force, seems to be moving forward, a lot of energy that's happening. And again, our hope is that that task force is able to help our business community emerge from this more successfully than if they were each operating on their own, trying to figure out their best pathway through. I thought tonight it might also be helpful to talk a little bit about our facilities and the status of our facilities. There's a list of all the things that are open in our community, from our boat docks and our community gardens and our dog parks. You are permitted to hammock in the parks, and I know we have many people that do that. Our shelters are open, although we're not reserving them. And people do need to comply with having fewer than 10 people together at once. And certainly our open spaces are open, our picnic tables, and our grills and that type of area. We do have some facilities that are open for limited use, and these are pretty much our playing fields. So our baseball fields and disc golf and horseshoes and pickleball, soccer, tennis courts, all are open for use, but they are not for organized team use, and they are only to be used by people who are within that same household or same living arrangement. Again, we don't want organized teams using these facilities, but individual household groups are certainly free to get out, use our facilities, and get the fresh air and recreate. We do have some facilities that are still closed. Our basketball courts, our drinking fountains, the indoor park shelters, our playground structures still remain closed at this point in time. I'm sorry, this said restrooms on it. That is not correct. Restrooms have opened up. We did open the restrooms on Friday going into the holiday weekend. So that is incorrectly noted on the list here. So restrooms in our parks have been opened for the weekend. And the skate park remains closed. And City Hall and our administrative offices at this point in time remain closed. In terms of just kind of an impact update, from a staff perspective, and we are supporting the public health order and the public health incident command process as they take the lead in managing this crisis. We are continually evaluating our city facilities and the status of those given the health orders that are there. So we will be coming out hopefully shortly with our plans for how we want to start to open up some of our facilities, some of the facilities that we've talked about that are closed currently. Again, using a risk-based approach and keeping us in line with the public health orders. From an operational perspective, police, fire, and community services, our primary operating departments, have settled into a pattern. They have broken into smaller groups that say separated and isolated from each other. We have different reporting times, different schedules, different ways of doing our work. And so we're settling into a rhythm with police and fire and community services that really, I believe, will be our new mode of operation, until there's, a vaccine or a cure or, other changes in the status. We're still working through the City Hall operations. We believe that we're meeting the vast majority of customer needs already with online services, and in fact, we've received very few and almost no complaints about people not being able to get things done with interacting with City Hall. So we want to make sure we continue that, and to the extent that there are some improvements we can make in that service level, we want to do that. But again, thinking very carefully that there's over 100 people that work in this building. That's a large number of people. We do have a highly communicable disease, and we want to make sure that we don't set ourselves up for a situation where there would be spread and within that work group that would make it difficult or impossible to actually continue to provide the service and the service levels that we have now. So we are exploring that, but we're going slowly and cautiously with it. And then the public meetings, just figuring out where we're going to go with the public meetings and how do we want to have, what will the new normal pre-vaccine, pre-treatment world look like as it relates to public meetings. I think we all recognize that this environment is less than efficient. It's less than ideal. In terms of interaction between the members of the public body themselves, as well as our ability to interact with the members of the public. And so, we're meeting the law and being able to function, but perhaps there's some better ways that we can do that, and so we continue to explore that. In terms of financial impacts, really nothing has changed from 2 weeks ago. We believe that although we are going to have losses in revenue and we are having increases in expenses, that certainly for 2020, not certainly, but for 2020, we believe we're going to be able to make that work within the resources that we have or reserves that we have. The one caveat that I would say is there is more talk now at the state level about a budget repair bill and the possibility of the state needing to make adjustments to their support for local governments as well as schools and universities and other local entities that are supported by the state in 2021 with a budget repair bill. If that does come to pass, that would likely impact not only our road programs and support at the local road and transportation levels, but also at the shared revenue levels. And past experience has told us that when those cuts come, they don't come. The funding does not return. And so, unlike a one-time dip in certain revenues that we think will come back, if we lose the shared revenue support or local aid for road support, those are long-term, ongoing adjustments that we're going to need to take a serious look at. So, still a lot unknown in that area, and we'll have to see where that goes. But I do want to just make sure everybody recognizes that that will possibly be in our future to have to deal with adjustments in shared revenue and local aids. In terms of our next steps and where we're at today, we certainly want to continue to remain flexible to changing conditions and orders. We're working with the health department to be able to prepare for any surge that might be coming with the kind of opening of things and the spread that we know is going to happen. We continue to look at our operational adjustments to find that new normal for operations. We continue our work and support for the Economic Recovery Task Force. And I just want, it's been a kind of a hot topic and people are talking about it. I just want the council and the community to be aware that from a staff perspective, we are looking at and hope to come forward with some proposals to allow businesses to be able to expand their premise and operations safely. So looking at how we're using some of our roadways, how businesses might be able to use their parking lots. Are there things that can be done, particularly in the summer months, that would allow a business to be able to expand outside of their usual premise safely, help them operate more safely and make it a better experience for their customers and as well as their employees. And so we're actively looking at some ways in which we might be able to do that, not only just downtown, but for the entire city. So stay tuned for that, and we're hopeful to be able to bring you back some proposals and some ideas to look at letting businesses expand outside their current premise. So that is all I have for you as a quick update, and certainly open for any questions, comments, or feedback that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Is there questions from council? Councilmember Gregor.
Thank you, President Weld. Mr. Peters, thank you so much for this update. First of all, I know it's been quite a lot of work in the last couple months, and it really shows that city staff have been stepping up. It's been amazing. I guess the question I had was a little bit maybe outside the scope of the city, but I'm sure it's something that the Incident Command is working on quite a bit. Could you maybe give us an update on the availability of personal protective equipment at our healthcare institutions or broadly in the community?
Sure. And our health officer, Lisa Giese, is actually doing her own press update, right now, and is not here. But so you are absolutely correct. Incident Command is keenly aware of the need and challenges of having enough PPE in the community. And so I can tell you that there's a whole logistics branch, and that is their focus, is to help with that PPE, acquisition and then distribution, within the community. So That is going to be certainly one of the challenges. I mean, there are many challenges with reopening and expanding, people moving in the community. And the capacity of the healthcare system is certainly one of those metrics, and the ability to handle seriously ill people, the ability for the health department to be able to monitor and track and manage increase in cases is certainly another metric that needs to be met. And then there is just the practical side of if there's a recommendation for certain types of PPE or masks, where does that come from? And how does that come with enough of it in a timely way so that there's access to it? So I know that's not probably the concrete answer that you're looking for. What I can tell you is that within the incident command system, there is very active conversations about PPE. There's also active conversations about masks and the guidance related to masks and I guess I would say that will continue to come out and be available, through the incident command system and the media updates that they provide.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Beaton.
Thank you, Council President Weld, and thanks, Mr. Peters, for the update, and also to the staff for being so responsive to the needs, the unique needs of our community right now. I'm wondering if you could give a little bit more detail on what is happening at the Hobbs Ice Center temporary shelter. Certainly don't want to put you on the spot for any sort of statistics or anything that you might not have on hand, but if you could give just a little bit more detail on kind of what's happening there and how the community is being served there.
Sure, absolutely. So when the coronavirus started to come, into the community, it was recognized that the current facility in the community, the Sojourner House, could not safely accommodate all of the individuals that we had in the community that were experiencing homelessness. And so we needed to find a bigger space so that there could be a safe place at night for people to sleep that provided the social distancing that is expected to help prevent the spread among that population. So Hobbs Ice Arena was something that we looked at. We had a sheet of ice that was off, and so basically you're talking about a hockey rink arena with a cement floor. We had cots that were donated, and we were able to set it up for, I want to say, about 85 people. And it's actually very nicely done. So the Sojourner House and the staff from the Sojourner House are doing an excellent job of working with that population. And so it's set up where there's tape all over the floor, marking different places. There's a cot, there's a table, there's a chair, for each person. And so each person essentially has a place that they can safely reside and be separated from other people. Since that was initially started, then Positive Avenues started to provide some daytime opportunities there so that people wouldn't have to be moving around quite as much. And so now there's actually operations there 24 hours a day with a combined effort between Positive Avenues and the Sojourner House. So that's the current status, and that was what we were able to be rather nimble and pivot quickly on. It was March, there was snow, it was cold, it was wet, and so we were able to pivot and make that available relatively quickly. I think we all recognize long term that Hobbs is not designed to do that. And of course there are other uses that are planned for and that the Hobbs facility will be needed for. So there is a group again within the incident command system that is working at finding some alternatives to that. And again, we just need a little more time with that, and that's part of why the request for the extension of the emergency order is before you. So we have more time as we work through some other options for that population going forward.
Council Vice President Emmanuel.
Thank
Thank you, Council President Weldon. Good afternoon to our city staff, city manager, and Eau Claire, and our city council. Mr. Peters, thank you for the information update, and especially for the heart and compassion for our vulnerable populations in our community. I really appreciate that early eye to that. I wanted to ask a little bit about some guidance that you gave around public meetings in the future and what that may look like. I'm wondering if you're looking at alternate facilities aside from City Hall, or what that might look like, knowing that we don't have the answer today, but just curious what you all might be thinking about.
Yeah, so that's certainly been part of our conversation. Good question. We look at this room, and for those of us in this room, it's hard to have 11 council members and 2 staff people that are separated 6 feet apart. So we are looking at some redesign, perhaps, ideas within spaces that we have within City Hall. We are talking about if other facility, we'd like to stay in City Hall. I think it's good if the local city council can be doing their business in their City Hall, but we recognize that might not be possible. So yes. To answer your question, we are exploring perhaps other facilities. Certainly the electronics, though, start to become a challenge, and the microphones and how you have the transparency with it. But so those are. There's no obvious, easy, best answer. If there was, we would already have it before you. So it's either some type of a redesign. Or physical barriers and things that get placed, and protective things in our current facility, or it would be, again, have to go to some other facility.
Are there any other questions? Councilmember Gregor.
Yeah, thank you, President Weld. Mr. Peters, just another question. This one, maybe it's hard to answer, but I guess the issue of enforcement and whether I'm sure that's been quite a difficult balance, or different, just something that is maybe not super possible, but can you give us a perspective on since the city has, had to create our own public health order, has there been any change in enforcement of like gatherings, or the number of people at buildings or things like that that you'd be able to tell us about? Because I know that there's some concern in the community about seeing large gatherings at Half Moon Beach, for example, or at local taverns. Not sure if there's some perspective you can give us on what the city is doing about such concerns.
Sure. It's a challenge. It is absolutely a challenge. Our first priority is education and informing people. The vast majority of folks, when informed and asked to comply, are, and so that is our first approach. The other is that we are looking to have consistency in how it's approached. There is citation authority, so that is part of the order, and there is ability to have citations, and when needed, that is an option, or I guess a tool in the toolbox to help the community comply with the order. But I guess I just really want to emphasize, our first and strongest tool is education, and having people understand why why it's important to do what we're asking people to do, and helping them understand that, and then giving them options to be able to comply with it. So, so it is one of the reasons that we want to, or we believe that it's important to have a local order, because a local order does allow for citations. But again, I would emphasize that is a tool of last resort, and education and information is our primary tool for helping the community move forward in a way that will minimize the individual spread and the community spread.
Any other questions? I don't see any others. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks for all the information.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks for all your work. All right, moving on to the next item on our agenda, which is the consent agenda. Does council members have any questions regarding the consent agenda or wish to remove an item for separate consideration? Councilmember Worthman.
Yeah, Council President, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I was having technical difficulties. It wasn't allowing me to get onto the WebEx originally, and I have been on, and I've been listening to City Manager Peters' presentation, which I really appreciate, and would request that the chair mark me as present for this meeting.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Again, are there any questions or agenda items on the consent agenda that you wish to remove for consideration? Seeing none, and on a motion by Councilmember Anderson and seconded by Councilmember Klinkhammer, the consent agenda is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Berge,
Aye.
Christofferson,
Aye.
Emmanuel,
Aye.
Gregert,
Aye.
Klinkhammer, Lohr,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Worthman,
Aye.
John.
Aye.
And the consent agenda passes unanimously. Next on our agenda is a proclamation. And today we have one proclamation recognizing Pride Month. And I have Mr. Daniel Hardy that's joining me virtually. And we've also been working with Mr. Jason Bennett with this. So.
Hi, thank you, Council President Weld. My name is Dan Hardy, and I serve on the Board of Directors for the Chippewa Valley LGBTQ+ Community Center. On behalf of the entire board, our members, the people we serve, LGBTQ+ people across Eau Claire, and all of our allies, we extend our gratitude for the proclamation designating June as Pride Month in Eau Claire City. In these uncertain times, it is more important than ever to show those around us that we care and appreciate the necessity and advantages of celebrating a diverse and inclusive community. By means of this proclamation, a number of people in this community will feel heard and valued by the community at large. Pride Month is not just a celebration of what we are today, but also a celebration and remembrance of all those who came before us, their sacrifice, their struggles, and their victories. We are eternally grateful to them for helping us to get to where we are today. It's also a look forward to all of the challenges that the LGBTQ+ community seeks to overcome and to keep our voices loud and heard. As with many communities this year, our normal Pride events have been greatly scaled back to ensure the health and safety of everyone in the community. And as a community who has learned through experience the great respect of doctors and nurses who keep us safe, the scientists and researchers who create drugs and develop vaccines. We're striving to keep everyone safe. But it will be our continued effort during this month to shout our message of inclusion, diversity, and alliances within the community. We thank you again for your proclamation, making June Pride Month in Eau Claire City. You are helping make a difference to many people's lives.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy, and I'll share the proclamation with you, and then if you have any closing comments, you're welcome. Whereas June is considered Pride Month, and it is celebrated internationally, recognizing the Stonewall riots in New York, the birthplace of the modern LGBTQ+ movement. And whereas the rainbow flag was created in 1978 is internationally recognized as a symbol of LGBTQ+ rights. And Harvey Milk is recognized as the first openly gay person to be elected to public office, serving on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, and the city of Eau Claire has benefited from having multiple local LGBTQ+ elected officials on city council, school board, and county board. And whereas LGBTQ+ history is rich, an integral part of human history, and Pride is a celebration of societal inclusion celebrated annually by the members of LGBTQ community and its allies. And whereas members of the LGBTQ+ community continue to have hardships in life at a disproportionate rate, including discrimination, harassment, intimidation, poverty, homelessness, school harassment, physical assault, violence, hate crimes, mental issues, and substance abuse concerns. And whereas the city of Eau Claire wishes to be a healthy, safe, diverse, and prosperous community for everyone, now therefore I, Terry Weld, President of the Eau Claire City Council, on behalf of the entire City Council and the citizens of Eau Claire, do hereby proclaim June as Pride Month in the city of Eau Claire and encourage all residents to promote equality, enrich alliances, inspire inclusion, and celebrate diversity. Thank you. Mr. Hardy, did you have any other?
Again, I just want to extend the thanks of the entire LGBTQ+ community in Eau Claire and the greater Chippewa Valley for extending this proclamation. It's in times like this to take the effort is very appreciated, and we look forward to having a small pride this year, but in the future making sure that our voices are heard within the community even more going forward. So thank you to the entire City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. All right, we will get started on our business agenda. With agenda item number 6, which is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a state municipal agreement for the state-led STP urban project for the construction of Jeffers Road from State Highway 312 to County Line Road as part of the state project 7995-02-60/61. Good afternoon, Mr. Solberg.
Good afternoon. If it's okay with the City Council President, I have a short presentation for items number 6 and 7 together, since they're very similar. And then they would have separate votes, but I could answer questions on both of those afterwards.
Certainly.
Okay, so item number 6 is the Jeffers Road project that has been much talked about. It starts from Highway 312 and goes to County Line Road. And it shows up on the left side of your screen there. And the other project is Fairfax Street from South Hastings Way to Spooner Avenue. It's State Project 7995-02-58 and 59. That is a shared project with the City of Altoona. So state funding will provide funding for a portion of that, and the remaining local share will be split evenly between the City of Eau Claire and the City of Altoona. So just a few of the key points with the agreement with the state. Both projects, Jeffers Road and Fairfax Street, are scheduled to begin and complete construction in 2022. Both projects include improved pavement, utilities, and bicycle pedestrian facilities. Jeffers Road, the scope of that project is very similar to what was recently done on Melby Street and Short Street with the same state program. So it's a rural cross-section. It'll be turned into an urban cross-section with curb and gutter, on-street bike lanes, sidewalk on one side, and a multi-use trail on the other. Fairfax Street is very similar to what we recently constructed on Craig Road between Highway 37 and Claremont Avenue. That's currently a 4-lane street, and it will be turned into a 3-lane street with a 2-way left turn lane or a twiddle, on-street bike lanes, and sidewalks will be completed along the full length of that section of street from Hastings Way to Spooner Avenue on both the Altoona side and the Eau Claire side. Both projects together are almost $2.6 million. The state aid will be just a little less than $1.5 million, so it's approaching 60% cost share from the state. If the bids come in less, that state portion will remain the same up to a maximum of 80% of the cost. So if we do have some bid savings, the percentage will stay higher and it'll be less that the city portion will be. Out of that 1.5 million, almost 1.5 million allotment, there's 569,000 for Jeffers Road and 899,000 for Fairfax Street. The process for projects in this program are the city pays for a consultant typically to design the projects, and the design has begun, and the state will bid the project through their process. The state will hire a consultant to inspect the street, and the city will inspect our utilities that are constructed at each time with the projects, and then the city will reimburse the state for our local cost share. The design has begun earlier this year on each project, and once some of the restrictions and the guidelines related to the current health crisis that we have are eased and safety is more achievable with public involvement, we'll start having open houses for both projects. Jeffers Road, we have taken a rather large number of calls on Jeffers Road, primarily with the pavement condition, and when we explain to them what we're planning to do out there, it's resoundingly positive, and people are excited to have that done. And then in the meantime, we'll work with our community services to try and keep it together. So it's in kind of rough shape. Fairfax Street isn't quite as bad, but Fairfax Street has some rather gaping pedestrian deficiencies as well as pavement, and that'll be a vast improvement also. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions on either project.
Does council have any questions? Councilmember Gregor.
Yeah, thank you, President Weld, and thank you, Mr. Solberg. Really appreciate the comprehensiveness of these early discussions on the projects, especially the way we can, add bike and pedestrian facilities when neither of them have them currently. I guess I have two questions regarding Jeffers Road. Was there ever any sort of consideration to include with this project or plan in the future some sort of bike and pedestrian underpass underneath Highway 312 on the southern end?
With this project, there would not be a pedestrian underpass included. We have talked with the state regarding that. 312 is still under WSDOT jurisdiction. They understand the growing pedestrian need in that area. They are planning to increase the features with the signals to facilitate safe crossings with our trail that goes through. And they've encouraged us to possibly apply for a TAP grant for that. It wouldn't necessarily qualify in this program for an underpass. And the other program that could be utilized would be the HSIP, or the Highway Safety Improvement Program, if there is a documented safety concern at that intersection. Unfortunately, then there are safety monies that are available to treat that. So it is discussions that we've had with them. They're not the state doesn't have funding currently to fund it themselves, so it would be largely an almost exclusive municipal cost, and it would be a very expensive underpass at this time with that 4-lane configuration and the width of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember or Council Vice President Emmanuel.
Thank you, Council President Weld. Mr. Solberg, I have a question around the state aid. And I know you probably don't have a crystal ball, but wondering if there's any potential jeopardy of a budget repair bill kind of removing any state aid, or if this is money that's already been committed.
It is money that's in the state's program. It's already programmed for in the 2017 through 2022 budget cycle for the state. So I would not anticipate that the lead dollars or the money for construction would be impacted with a budget repair bill, and I guess I would be more optimistic that through economic recovery and projects, and these projects are in the pipeline to be designed, that they a year from now would be shovel-ready projects, even though they'll be constructed in 2022. Largely the design will be done. So if you look back at the Great Recession in 2008, there was stimulus money and efforts to revive the economy through public works projects. So I would hope that essential infrastructure that really can't be deferred or delayed wouldn't be something that is removed. And this program is actually administered through WSDOT, so it's state funds, and we're paying them back for our portion, as opposed to a grant being given to the city as reimbursement for something that we're paying for up front, like some of the other programs. So I guess, like you had said, I don't have a crystal ball, but I have pretty high confidence that we wouldn't be seeing a significant reduction in that. But as my uncle, a former banker, said, it's not money in the bank until it's money in the bank.
Councilmember Gregor.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. Mr. Solberg, another question on Jeffers Road, and I guess I'm eternally curious, and you've heard this question from me before, but I was just wondering if there was an update on it. Do you know yet what side of Jeffers Road you had envisioned the bike trail being constructed? Because I guess it sounds like there could be, it could depend on what kind of properties are impacted on either side, but is there a sense of what side is most likely or preferred to have the trail from your perspective?
Our initial thoughts are that we probably would prefer, if all things are equal, to have the trail on the east side. The Northwest Community Park is on the east side. If we ever have a trail that goes along the north side of the North Crossing that connects down to the North Crossing bridges over the Chippewa River, you would be able to traverse from Old Wells Road along 312, and then you would be able to go north into the neighborhoods without having to cross Jeffers Road to get to the other side. That being said, I would envision, we do have a community park, or I guess, I don't know what the classification is, but we have the ball field, Jeffers Park, on the one side of the street. So we would have to have an enhanced crossing regardless, similar to the sidewalk and the trail on Riverview Drive that will be under construction. So we will have a safe crossing to get across, not only at the signals, but also as you, somewhere along the way, as you get at an access point for the park. But right now, I guess our preference would be to have it on the east side, because it seems like it creates more continuity for bicyclists with less crossings of Jeffers.
Thank you. I guess as a follow-up, Like, does that also seem to be the most feasible at this point, from what you know?
We're very early into the process, so we have a survey that wrapped up this spring, and we're going through some of the environmental processes that are archaeological and historical. So we haven't gotten into some of the impacts for the houses yet, and right-of-way impacts. We anticipate those this summer, and then when we have it documented on each side, that'll be something that we'd like to bring to the public involvement meetings, just to help everybody understand what went into the decision-making process.
Okay. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yep.
Any other questions from council? Councilmember Klinkhammer.
Thank you, Mr. President. When this Fairfax was first mentioned, it was brought up by your predecessor, Brian Amundson.
Oh.
So I'm pleased that it's moving forward. At the time that it was first brought up, there was conversation regarding the joint project between Eau Claire and Altoona, but there was nothing in there about the Wisconsin DOT participation. I'm having to assume that both of these projects are being qualified under the DOT urban program through the initiative of you and your office. Is that correct?
Well, we apply for the money for it, and have been pretty successful so far picking the right candidates for it. So yeah, we apply. We try to beg, borrow, and steal where we can for federal funds and state funds, and to try and offset the cost for that. So in this case, we get, we'll be the beneficiaries of almost $1.5 million for those. So
Thank you very much for your work.
Any other questions from council for Mr. Solberg? I don't see any other questions. Thank you. So in regards to agenda item number 6, on a motion then by Councilmember Beaton and seconded by Councilmember Zhang, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Beaton,
Aye.
Berge,
Aye.
Christofferson,
Aye.
Emmanuel,
Aye.
Gregert,
Aye.
Klinkhammer,
Aye.
Lohr,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Worthman,
Aye.
Zhang,
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 7 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a state municipal agreement for state-led STP urban project for the construction of Fairfax Street from South Hastings Way to Spooner Avenue as part of the state project. Again, Mr. Solberg just presented on this agenda item. Are there any questions for Mr. Solberg? Seeing none, then on a motion by Councilmember Lohr and seconded by Councilmember Christofferson, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Berge,
Aye.
Christofferson,
Aye.
Emmanuel,
Aye.
Gregert,
Aye.
Klinkhammer,
Aye.
Lohr,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Worthman,
Aye.
Zhang,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 8 is a resolution awarding a contract for procurement number 2020-29, the city manager executive search firm services. Mr. Bowie. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Council President. Good afternoon, council members. An RFP was issued for executive search services for the city manager recruitment. There were 8 firms that submitted proposals. Council members reviewed the proposals, held work sessions, and conducted interviews of the shortlisted vendors. Based on scoring submitted by each council member, as well as feedback from council members during work sessions, the top-ranked response proposal for RFP 2020-29 Executive Search Services for City Manager is Baker Tilly in the amount of $24,500. Based on your recommendation applying city procurement and RFP scoring policies, the resolution awards the contract to Baker Tilly. I would be happy to answer any questions the council may have regarding the recommendation or the process.
Are there any questions from council? I don't see any questions. Thank you very much. On a motion then by Council Vice President Emmanuel and seconded by Councilmember Berge, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Christopherson.
Thank you, President Weld. I would just like to say, Mr. Bovee made it sound very instantaneous, but it was very clear. It was a robust process. It's all documented for public inspection. And I'm just really proud of the process that we went through. And I think that we, from consensus, have an excellent choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Christopherson. Council Vice President Emmanuel.
Thank you, Council President. I want to just speak in support of this. This is a significant milestone in our city manager search in selecting a firm. Council has done extensive work working with staff and evaluating the potential firms. Of course, the numbers stand alone, and so there's many criteria of how and why Baker Tilly rose to the top. But I do want to raise one item that I think is really important, is that geographically they are pretty close to us. And so while we figure out the logistics of social distancing and having public meetings, I think we really do have an advantage of having a search firm that's geographically pretty close to us, and look forward to working with staff and council on our next important steps.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Is there any other? Discussion? No? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Christopherson,
Aye.
Emmanuel,
Aye.
Gregert,
Aye.
Klinkhammer,
Aye.
Lohr,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Worthman, Zhang,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Berge,
Aye.
Worthman.
He just came back on. Andrew, are you there? All right, well, we'll call that unanimous, 10 votes to 0. Agenda item number 9 is a resolution extending the emergency declaration in the city of Eau Claire. Mr. Peters, if you have anything else you wish to share?
I don't have anything other to add to the presentation than we had earlier.
Thank you. Does council have any questions for Mr. Peters in regards to agenda item number 9 and the emergency declaration? I don't see any additional questions. On a motion then by Councilmember Worthman and seconded by Councilmember Gregert, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Christopherson.
Thank you, President Weld. I just want to make a comment after the information that was shared about the update. In conversations when I've had an opportunity to talk about how our community is managing this pandemic, in questions from people in other communities, I'm always really proud about the transparency, the incident command structure, the fact that it's something that is in place and ready to be implemented instead of being constructed. And I think that all of the information that the public and the council has been presented just allows us in our own anger and confusion and fear to at least be well-informed and to be able to react or come back to a place of shared information. So I just think our process is excellent, and I'm really proud of this work that we have done together. Thank you.
Councilmember Christopherson. Council Vice President Emmanuel.
Thank you, Council President. I want to speak in support to extend the emergency declaration because, as it's been mentioned, this disease really does not know any calendar, it doesn't know any geographic boundaries or political affiliation. I feel it's important to match the tenacity of our community in both the public and the private spheres, all of the people who are working to recover from the ongoing effects of the disease, whether it's the economy, education, and the people who live here. I have been impressed and appreciative of the nimble administration, which is further enhanced with this emergency declaration to best serve our community.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Is there any other discussion? Yeah, I certainly want to echo the words that have already been shared. I think, you know, there continue to be challenges. There'll certainly be many more ahead of us. And we're, I think, all very fortunate for the work that this community does for each other in support of each other and our staff and the county and health department and you know, everyone that's been a part of this. I can't express, you know, our thanks enough, but know that moving forward, it's just as challenging, if not more challenging, to reopen than it was to shut down. And so I'm thankful and appreciative of Mr. Peters and his eagerness and willingness to help us through that, and then obviously everyone else that's been a part of this process, including Ms. Giese and so on. So, is there any other comments or discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Emmanuel,
Aye.
Gregert,
Aye.
Klinkhammer,
Aye.
Lohr,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Worthman, Zhang,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Berge,
Aye.
Christopherson,
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. There are no ordinances for action this evening or this afternoon. There are two ordinances for introduction. Agenda item number 10 is an ordinance amending the zoning code of the City of Eau Claire by amending the general development plan to allow multifamily apartments with reduced setback located on the northwest corner of South Farwell Street and Emery Street. And also agenda item number 11, which is an ordinance in accordance with section 66.0217 Wisconsin statutes annexing to the City of Eau Claire, and particularly to the 16th Assessment Ward, 4th Aldermanic District, County Highway F, Town of Wheaton, Chippewa County, as shown on the planning drawing number 20-4A. An annex ordinance requires 2/3 vote of the elected members of the governing body. Therefore, 8 affirmative votes of the 11 elected council members are required for adoption. Does council wish to suspend the rules and take up any of the two ordinances this evening? I do not see anyone that so desires, which leads us to announcements. City Manager Peters.
Only that following this meeting, we have a work session to have the initial presentation of our 5-year capital improvement project plan.
Thank you. Are there any other announcements from council? So let's plan on 5:20. Does that seem fair? We will see everyone back here at 5:20 for the start of the work session. And we'll be here in council chambers. And if there is no objection from council, we are adjourned.